Okay, we will start this again. As I said earlier, I had went through the military. That's where I learned my drinking at. And I learned how to drink a lot of stuff and do a lot of different things. And it was all feel good stuff because you're basically bored in the military and you don't know what to do to fill up the time. And so you just automatically start drinking. I went to the club on bases, and then whenever they put me on a aircraft carrier, we done a couple of med cruises, and I went to a lot of different countries in Europe. I went to Italy, Greece, Spain, Egypt, Israel, and honestly, I don't remember a lot about what I've seen while I was in those places, except for Egypt. I did go see the pyramids in Egypt. I do remember that part. But there's a lot of it I don't remember because I had got into their alcohol is different than our alcohol. Theirs has more of a content of actual alcohol, and it's a lot stronger. But I had learned to drink in those countries, and I basically just blew through those med cruises without really accumulating anything of memory because I purchased a few things, souvenirs and that kind of stuff. But to be honest with you, I couldn't even tell you remembering even going into the stores to buy the stuff. That's whenever you get into alcoholism, I guess you call it a blackout phase or a near blackout phase. You just don't remember. There's a lot that you don't remember that you did, that you shouldn't have done. But anyway, I went through that, and I went through the treatment center, and I helped everybody during that 30-day period. I helped a lot of people. I helped several people, hopefully, to stay sober. But the only person I didn't help was myself, because just as soon as I got out of the 30 days of treatment center, I had some stuff at home, and I had decided that I was going to do that. And then next thing you know, I was at the beer store getting me a quart of beer, and from that point going forward, the race was on, and my drinking had picked up right where it left off at. And if you go through a treatment center, and they'll tell you this in the treatment center, and I'll tell you as well, if you go through a treatment center and you quit for the 30 days, there's a lot of recommendations that they give you. Trust me, take a lot of the recommendations, because they might not sound like they will work, but I'm here to tell you that they will work if you work them. But when I got out of the treatment center, it just didn't take. And when you get out of the treatment center and you get dried out for 30 days or whatever, when you get out, once you take that first drink, you're right back to square one, right back to where you was whenever it dropped off. And I'm going to produce some charts. I've got to look some up, but to kind of show you, you can draw a straight line, and you start out in the center, get normal, and then you're getting high, and you're going on top of the line. And then as time goes on, your line to get back to normal falls a little bit below normal. So then you get to a point to where you're drinking from the bottom just to get up to the normal state, and then you got to buy more in order to get drunk or to get high, or however you want to put it. It'll get to feeling good. And that's where the danger point is, because at that point you've crossed the threshold into basically becoming an alcoholic, because once you get to that point, you have already gone past the point of no return. Well, it's not past the point of no return. There's always a return as long as you have Jesus Christ in your heart, or a higher power that you believe in. If you don't believe that there's a God, which I still believe that there's only 4 words that I can really say, is every knee will bow. And that's the word every is the key. But anyway, Jesus Christ done a lot for me. From that point going forward, Jesus was with me the whole time. But I had to, a lot of people talk about willpower, and a gentleman and I was talking earlier, we was talking about willpower. Everybody thinks that you can quit drinking by willpower. Well, that's not necessarily true, because alcoholism is a disease, and it changes the chemical composition in your mind. And you don't realize it, but it does over time. And it just builds, and then, at some point you build a resistance of getting drunk, and that's when you get back up to way down here below the normal part. And if you're way below the normal part, then you got to drink to get up to the normal part, and then drink further in order to get high. That's when you know you're an alcoholic, pretty much full blown. But as far as the willpower, we have the will to do anything we want, but the Lord gave us free will. It's the free will that conflicts with the will, because you may have the will to quit drinking, but you also have the free will to say, screw it, I'm going to drink anyway. That's where the free will comes in. That's where you have to lean on the Lord to give you the courage to not drink, to keep on walking by that beer cooler, or keep on driving by the liquor store where you're used to stopping at all the time. Just keep on going. Not to mess around with the friends that you have that are alcoholics who are not willing to admit that they have a problem, but after you went to the AA meeting and you realize that you've got a problem, you know every friend around you that has a problem, because it's just something you instinctively know. And you have to learn to stay away from those people, because that was actually it wasn't too hard for me, because at the time that I realized, once I went through the treatment center, at the follow, when I got back out and the packing house shut down where I worked at, I was forced to move. I had got a couple of job offers because, as I said earlier, I was very good at my job. Any job that I go for, I go at 120%, and it's not to. I don't do things to take over. I do things that seem the right, correct way in my mind. And I was a manager for many years, and it's one of those things where it embeds a mentality in your mind. Once you figure out that you're good at certain things, and you start realizing, okay, well, I could be good at doing this, or I could be good at doing that. It's just a matter of putting all the tools and gathering all the tools and all the knowledge that you can around that particular thing, and just building on that. Well, that's what also helped me become an unsuccessful alcoholic, because I knew how to hide it. I knew what to say. I knew how to manipulate people. I knew how to get money when I needed it. And to be honest with you, I've actually, during my drinking years, I didn't have a problem walking in a store and walking out with a couple of cases of beer in my hands. No problem whatsoever. And at that time, I didn't care, because I only had one thing on my mind. I had to feed this urge in my mind that I needed to get drunk. And that's just the way my mentality was. But I apologize for the weave, but I'm trying to weave back to when I went through the treatment center. I met this woman, and I thought she'd never have anything to do with me, and conversation turned into a relationship, and a relationship turned into marriage, and we had had a child, and actually we had 2 children. She had a son whenever we got together. He was 3.5, 4 years old, and he took right up with me, and I took right up with him. And as far as I'm concerned, he's my son, because we was eating supper one night, and I forget what it was, but he asked me to pass him something, and then he said, "Thank you, Dad." And that was the first time he called me Dad, and it warmed my heart, and it actually, in a strange sort of way, guilted me, because here this young'un is calling me Dad, and now, I've got to live up to that. And from that point to this day, I live up to that, and I want to live up to that. I want to give him all the examples that he could possibly get, so that he can grow up to be a producing adult. Or that's a weird term to use, I guess, for lack of a better word, but that's the only word that comes off. I want him to be a good producer in society. As far as he's going to have a family at some point, and I want him to be able to take care of that family. And in order for me to be able to do that, I have to provide the example. And let me tell you, an alcoholic can't provide any example. The only thing that example that an alcoholic can provide is how to be an alcoholic for the rest of your life. And that's just something that I did not want for him, and I didn't want it for my daughter either. And it's just one of those things. I knowed how to lie. I knowed how to get my way. I knowed how to work the system in my mind, and it worked very well. I drank wine coolers. I kept Tic Tacs all the time. I was able to cover everything up. And I would take our paychecks, both of our paychecks, and I would spend them on beer or on liquor instead of doing what's important and paying my bills. And I had gotten behind on bills, and I had brought myself to the point of the stress had gotten so much on me, and then the drinking escalated even more. And then whenever I was confronted by my spouse, now don't get me wrong, I don't believe in abusing women at all, and I would never do that, because if it comes down to an argument where me and my wife's in an argument or something, like, I'll walk away, or I'll walk away from a fight, because to me, fighting doesn't prove anything, and it just, all fighting does is you get hurt, and you may have to go to the darn hospital. So to me, it just doesn't prove anything, and it never really has. I mean, I had gotten in bar fights whenever I would go overseas, because whenever I was in the military, there was a guy that I hung out with all the time, and we'd walk into a club up there, and he would start making fun of the native people there. And the next thing I know, fists were flying, tables were flying, chairs was flying, and I was on the floor trying to figure out how the hell I was going to get out there. And it was just. And then the next week, me and him, I go right back to go out and club again, because apparently I didn't learn my lessons. But so to me, fighting never solved anything. The only thing fighting solves is, okay, how many punches can you take before you fall? But I guess the point is, she knew things was going on with me, and I know that she knew that I was a drinking and all that, and she knew that I wasn't paying the bills the way I was supposed to be paying. And at that point, alcohol, it stopped. It wasn't occasional anywhere. I kept going to work just like I was supposed to, because I was a functioning alcoholic. Functioning alcoholics have to work. It's one of those things. So if you go to work somewhere and you've got alcoholic, and if there's any alcoholics, or well, we'll say people that drink on the job, you know who they are, because you walked by them at one point or another and smelled alcohol on their breath. You may not have said something, but you knew it. Just like people knew that, whenever they smelled Tic Tac on me, at that point I had built up a reputation. Okay, well, he's just covering up for his drinking, because the alcohol doesn't really leave. You get the odor of the Tic Tac, but it's an alcoholic type Tic Tac odor, if that makes any sense. But you keep coming. You come up with all kinds of excuses, and you're wanting. At that point, I went to the AA meetings whenever I went through the treatment center the first time. I knowed it was wrong, but I just kept on doing it, because at some point you're hoping that something will come along that would trigger you to quit drinking, but at the same time, you can't do it. You just can't bring yourself to do it. You just fall right back into the same old habits over and over and over. And I'm gonna tell you something. If you're an alcoholic and you know you're an alcoholic, there isn't but three endings for this. You either get treatment, you go to jail, or you pass away. That's the only three options that there are. So you got to pick one. And for me, I didn't want to go to jail, and luckily, in all the years that I drank, I didn't go to jail, because I did a lot of things and I should have been in jail. I mean, my drinking days, this was in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. The places where I lived at, it was a sparse county. It wasn't really like a rural setting. It was more or less at like a country type setting. The houses were way far apart, and I could drive around, and if a county mountie got behind me, 90% of the time they would just follow me to see to it that I got home. And it was just one of those things where I got lucky, because honestly, in hindsight, if I would have got thrown in jail, I might have quit drinking sooner than I did. But I didn't. So I just continued on and continued on. Well, I was speaking earlier about the friends. There was friends of mine. What really helped me, and it did help me, and if you think about it, it can help everybody, because we've talked about it in Alcoholics Anonymous. And to be honest with you, I'm nervous in front of this camera. So if y'all look at me and I'm struggling to catch words, I'm not really struggling. It's just trying to figure out which words to use. But anyway, when I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the things they suggested during my stay at the treatment center, was you have to dump all your friends. So, I mean, if you got friends that are doing drugs, you got friends that are drinking a lot, and you got friends that you hang out with on a regular basis, and y'all go out drinking, or y'all gather at somebody's house to watch a football game, which I never was into sports that much, but I know that's a lot of that. Sports are big in the South, and I'm from the South. But I was always too interested in getting drunk and doing other things. But you get together with your friends to watch ball game. You all have beer and snacks and this kind of stuff, or tailgate party and a lot of beer around. Or you going out in the country to a kegger where they'll have 3 or 4 kegs out there, and then you got 50 or 60 people gathered together, and all of you chipped in the money for the kegs, and y'all just got out there and got drunk. Well, see, what helped me was when the packing house shut down that I was working at, and this was shortly after she and I had got together. I'd gotten a job offer because, as I said earlier, I'm very good at the stuff that I learned to do. I'm very good at it, and I was a very good butcher. And I got a job offer for a place about an hour and a half away from all my friends. And I was thinking to myself, well, this is the only option I got, so I guess I'll just take it. But then in hindsight, once I took that, it was great. I mean, because I didn't have to deal with my friends. Because my friends didn't look me up, because when you quit drinking, first people that's going to drop you is your friends. Because they're not going to want to be around you then, because they know you're trying to quit drinking, and you're hindering their drinking. And they'll get to where they'll just disassociate themselves with you, and they don't want to be around you, because the fact is you don't drink, and they don't want to be around someone that doesn't drink. So when I moved, I lost all those friends, but at the same time, that was also an Achilles heel, because now I could drink and nobody knew me. So it was like, okay, this is going to work out pretty good on that aspect. And that was the devil jumping up and saying, okay, well, you can do it this way and get away with it. And I played that game for a little bit. And I had went to work at the packing house, and I was moody. Couldn't get along with. There was a couple of females that worked in there. I got along with them, and they're great people. And to this day, one of them is probably one of my best friends. That is also friends with me and my wife. But at the same time, at that time, I gave them all kind of problems. They said I was moody as I would get out. I didn't want to do anything. I would come in, if I wanted to bone out 5 head of cattle, I'd bone out 5 head. If I wanted to bone out 10 head of cattle, I'd bone out 10 head. And then at the end of the week, I was bitching because my paycheck wasn't what I thought it should be. And I was always concerned, always bitching about something. And it was just one of those things. But they knew me, but I don't know if they was afraid to say something to me, afraid I would quit or whatever. And at that time, I was a functioning alcoholic. I had to work somewhere. And at this place, I had nowhere else to go. If I had quit that place, then my only option was to go to work at a grocery store. And at that time, grocery stores had switched over from the big piecework over to prepackaged meats. So there was nothing for me to do there other than trim meat. And I'm a butcher. So, I'm a butcher. I use a knife to take the bones out of cattle, and it's one of those positions where you're in control of that cow. You got the cow hanging on the rail. You're taking that cow off the rail, and you're taking all the bones out of it. All the meat's going into a box, and the bones are going into a bone tray to be sent off to be processed into dog food. And I felt like I was producing something there. But if I'd have went to work at a grocery store where I've got to trim steaks and I've got to do this and that to me, that's not producing anything, because I didn't produce it. It got produced for me. I'm just the finisher. And I didn't look at butchering that way. And I think that was the goal of the producers, the big meat packers, in the process anyway. But I had done it for so many years that, I mean, I could pick right up, and it wouldn't take me but a couple hours to pick right back up where I left off, and I could butcher a cow without any problem. But anyway, back to where I was. We had moved here, and it gave me the ability to drink without no friends, and that was great, because I could go to the grocery store. We only had one vehicle that operated, so I could go to the grocery store. I could drink me a 6-pack of beer the whole time I was going to the grocery store and back home. And I'd done a whole lot of sneak drinking, and she knew I was sneak drinking, but she never really would say a whole lot about it, although she had worried look in her eye. But I was too stupid to pick up on it. It just didn't dawn on me. And I had stopped trusting myself, and every time I'd basically lost faith in my ability to change. I'd lost faith in myself, and at that time I had kind of put Jesus Christ in the back of my heart instead of the front, where he should be 100% of the time, which he is now 100% of the time, because I know what's important, and I'm old enough to know what's important. And I hope that if there's somebody out there that is listening to me, and I'm doing this for you all, because I figure if I tell my story, and I'm brave enough and humble enough to tell my story, I'm not afraid of my story. I'm ashamed of parts of it, of course, but at the same time, in order for me to get to where I am, I had to go through that, and that wasn't pretty, and it was going to end terribly. Excuse me. But I couldn't ask for help because I was ashamed. And in a new area, I didn't really know anybody other than the people I was working with. And then my wife and my 2 kids, that's all I knew at that time. And I was ashamed to talk to my wife about it, because I'm supposed to be a man. I'm supposed to be the head of the household. I'm supposed to do what needs to be done, even if it's making a hard decision of, you can have this, but we can't afford that. We can afford this, but we can't afford that. And to keep our bills consolidated to where I can afford to pay out, because if you're only bringing X amount of dollars in, then you can't afford to pay out more than you're bringing in. It just does not work. It's a quick road to bankruptcy or something like that. But anyway, I was ashamed to talk to her, because here I'm supposed to be the man of the house, and yet she was more the man of the house than I was, because she had more of a strong head about her than I did, and I leaned on her without ever actually letting her realize that I was trying to lean on her, which, in hindsight, I think she knew all along, but she didn't really want to say anything. I think she was giving me time. But that woman stuck with me. She has stuck with me for the last 35 years. And I would not take $1 million for her. And I honestly mean that, because she is a strong woman. To have to deal with somebody like me, who is headstrong to begin with, and stubborn to begin with, secondly. But at the same time, I'm not so stubborn to where I don't realize, or I sit back and think after my actions has been done, whether I've done something wrong or whether I've done something right, and I'll analyze the situation. A lot of people says I'm over analytical on things, and I am analytical to a point. But I analyze situations and I analyze things, and I'll sit back and think, okay, could it something be done different? Could I have done that a little bit differently, or could I have done this differently? And would the end result be any different if I had done it in a different manner? Who did it affect? What kind of situation did I put my wife in? What kind of situation did I put my kids in? Are my kids ashamed of me? Are my kids, you got all this pressure on you if you're an alcoholic, but you don't realize it, and then you just drink more so that you don't have to realize it, because it's just what you do. You're good at covering up. You're good at being a coward, basically. And I don't say that in a cowardly manner. I know you're not afraid to defend your family. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making, you're an emotionally coward. And by that I mean, if you're not willing to admit that you're an alcoholic, then you're going to have that problem until you hit your rock bottom. And everybody's rock bottom is different. It's not something that you don't know what it is. I don't know what your rock bottom is. I know what my rock bottom was, and I can tell you what the possibilities of a rock bottom can be, and a lot of them you probably wouldn't want to hear, because drinking and drugging can really take you down that far, especially if you don't have Jesus Christ in your heart. I did have one thing on my side during this whole situation. As I said in the previous episode, I got saved whenever I was 10 years old, or 11 years old, or shortly after my father passed away. I'll never forget the day. I'll never forget the preachers. I'll never forget the church. But what I had done when I went into the military, I was raised in church. I went to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, like clockwork, all while I was in high school. I prayed. I sang. I was a member of the God's Doorkeepers. It was a youth group at the church where I had went to church at, where my mama took us to church at. Because after my father passed away, she made sure that all four of us kids was in church, and that was the right thing to do. And she knew it was the right thing to do. And I thank my mother for a lot of things. My mother was she's the bravest person I know, because she had went through hell. And that's really all I'm going to say about that, because it's not really, this is more about me than it is her, but I stayed in church. I had Jesus Christ in my heart. And when I went into the military, that changed because it changed the atmosphere. I went to a different place, and in the military I could be free to do anything I want, and that's where the creepy free will comes in at. I've got the Lord in my heart. I know that what I was doing was wrong, but I never had tried drinking, and if I could go back and change all that, I would. But I can't change that, because I had to start there in order to get here. And hopefully I can, through these episodes that I'm going to be putting out, hopefully I can persuade someone that to realize, and I can give you the signs. Well, I've just gave you several signs as to whether you're an alcoholic or not. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm not like that, you may not be like that, but don't get like that. It's just, and I'm not trying to preach it. As I said earlier, I'm not a podcaster. I don't do this on a professional basis. This is the first podcast I've ever tried. And to be honest, I'm petrified of this freaking camera. But at the same time, I've got the Lord in my heart, and I've got to do what the Lord tells me to do. The Lord put it on me to do this, and that's what I intend on doing, because I want to follow. I'm afraid not to do it, because the Lord will punish you for not doing what you should be doing, what He expects us to do. The hard part is trying to figure out exactly what He wants us to do with the devil on this shoulder over here and the Lord's over here. And so you got to figure out which voice is which. But anyway, I'm going to touch some more on, and we're going to get to my rock bottom. And I will tell you exactly what my rock bottom was. And it wasn't pretty. And your rock bottom may not be pretty either. But it's one of those things you got to decide, do you even want to pursue that rock bottom? Because I'll tell you, if you're not ready to quit drinking, you're not going to quit. You can't quit for your wife. You can't quit for your kids. You can't quit for anyone but you. I just want you to remember that. It has to be about you. And you have to keep certain principles and certain things about you in order to protect that sobriety. Because if you don't protect that sobriety, you will fall off the wagon. And if you fall off the wagon, just like I said earlier, you will pick up right where you left off, along with the bad bills, the bad thoughts, all the stress, all the anxiety, everything that comes along with it. It will return just like that. But anyway, I will go more into that in the next episode. Thank you and God bless. Hit subscribe, and if you have any comments, feel free to comment. You can comment to 35yearskept@gmail.com. And at some point, I will be starting a separate Facebook page for this, where I will put materials on this page to help you out. It'll be strictly dealing with sobriety and how I've kept my sobriety and how I will continue to keep my sobriety. And you can't, and as they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, you can't keep it if you don't give it away. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.